Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this panel discussion titled The Hidden Web Inside the Tactics of Link-Based Crime Networks. Moderated by Sara Al-Khaldi, Business News Anchor, Channel News Asia, CNA. Our panelists are Dr. Neal Jetton, Director, Cybercrime, Interpol; Christopher Porter, Head of International Security Cooperation, Google Cloud; Professor Dr. Marco Gercke, Cybercrime Research Institute; Eric Skinner, for Market Strategy, Trend Micro.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. And today, we're here to talk about link-based networks, which are the highways of cybercrime. Now, just like physical highways move people and goods, these digital highways, they move attacks, data, and illicit trade. And they power everything from campaigns, botnets, and dark web marketplaces. So what makes them so dangerous is their resilience. By spreading activity, criminals can hide their activity, hide their identities, and reroute traffic. And that's what makes disruption so difficult, but there is hope, and that's why we are here. In this panel, we'll talk about how these links are exploited and how to combat them. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. And I want to start by asking you all, why are link-based networks so difficult to disrupt, and how has this shifted from past tactics? Now, Dr. Jetton, we'll start with you at Interpol, and we can go down the line.
Yeah, so obviously as, technology evolves and, I mean, criminals are going to be the first to latch onto that and use it. I mean, anything that they can use to obfuscate themselves, to kind of remain anonymous. Yeah, we see it quite a bit. I mean, they're not only normal things like VPNs, but bulletproof hosting sites, darknet markets. And so what we have to as law enforcement is recognize this and make sure that we're targeting those things as well. But we also understand that because they're so pervasive, it's knocking these these infrastructure out and targeting them is only one aspect of what Interpol does. It's in the Cybercrime Directorate. We do want to stop them. We know that we're, to do that, we ultimately need to identify them and arrest them. But if we can't do that, then the next best thing is to go after their infrastructure, knowing that probably we're not going to stop them, just slow them down. But yeah, it's a very tricky topic.
Yeah, tricky one indeed, Dr. Jetton. Dr. Porter, at Google Cloud, you see infrastructure at scale, and AI is at play as well.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. What makes international cybercrime so hard to disrupt is the same thing that makes international business so powerful, which is that they can work across national lines, national boundaries. So very much like a business, they could hire hackers from Eastern Europe, they could have people running traditional crime networks, in Latin America, organized crime in Southeast Asia. They could have people who are good at physical crime or moving goods in this region. So that really requires coordination across national lines and the participation of companies like Google and others who can see the whole globe and the entire network all at once. The guys are counting on us not cooperating. That's part of their strategy for not getting caught, is hide pieces of the operation in different parts of the world. On the AI side, I mean, again, these are tools that are used by legitimate businesses every day. Cybercriminals also use them not only to launch attacks and impersonate people. I think particularly in Saudi Arabia, there's been a real rise in that kind of crime, people impersonating people and draining their bank accounts. That's very serious. But these criminal networks also use AI just to make their businesses more efficient. So I think that to keep in mind is that, yes, these are criminal enterprises, but they are first and foremost enterprises. They operate much like other international businesses. They have to be disrupted in the same way when we want to stop them.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're innovating as well. Professor Marco, you work with a lot of government agencies, you're a criminal law professor and do a lot of advisement work. How different is the challenge now from before?
Well, maybe first picking up on the previous points, I think we're, in our traditional world, there's not that much change around us. So we accept that there is crime there, and we recognize where it is. In the online world, there are fast developments. You spoke about AI. There are various examples that we can look into, and every criminals are moving into this space, I don't want to say surprised, but we're taking notice of that, and we're trying to, well, we have to deal with the fact to counter this. For governments, this is a challenge on the national level. I mean, most of the criminal law is still national criminal law. They counter it. They need to equip their law enforcement agencies with the right tools, both from a technical level as well as from the legal level. And that is not always easy when it comes to international crimes, as was mentioned before, where you can work together cross borders in a very easy way, but for law enforcement agencies, this is significantly more difficult. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where it is as easy as the criminals are cooperating to work together, but any progress we can make in this regard, the exchange of or harmonizing standards when it comes to not only criminal law, but also the fact of how we collect electronic evidence, we share evidence, this can all help us in at least identifying and then prosecuting the most severe criminals. For the low-level crime that is taking place at large scale, it is significantly difficult, but I think I'd be happy if we could see there with regard to those major criminals that we know of, but they're very difficult to tackle.
Yeah, Mr. Skinner, at Trend Micro, you're doing a lot of global threat monitoring as well. What are you detecting?
We definitely see that the are spending a lot of time trying to evade detection, right? That's been going on for a long, long time, but they can now do that with more automated tooling, and they can do it with accelerated coding abilities using AI. So in the area specific to this panel, we've seen that they've built automated tooling platform that allows them to rotate their link infrastructures tremendously fast. The old strategies of trying to keep track of what the bad domain names and the bad IP addresses are and try to block those simply doesn't work. The attackers have taken advantage of knowing that defense strategy, and they've realized, okay, well, let's rotate these IP addresses every few minutes. Let's start using domain names every few hours, and that enables them to bypass a lot of the traditional defenses that people put in place.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean for you guys at Trend Micro when you've got criminals being so creative and being so innovative? What are some of the solutions that you think everyone should keep in mind?
Well, one of the key strategies in general in cybersecurity right now from a detection perspective, and certainly in this area, is a shift that's been going on for some time now, which is to focus more on behavior detection rather than trying to detect specific IP addresses that are bad. Behavior tends to stay more consistent over a long period of time. So even if the IP address changes, you start to see other things that piece together about what the attacker is doing. The other important is a zero trust approach, right? Zero trust gets talked about. This is an area where it's really quite relevant to say, well, maybe when we start to see a brand new domain that a user is interacting with, it's only been registered one day prior, we should have default distrust of that kind of new domain. So zero trust approach and behavioral detection goes a long way compared to strategies.
Dr. Neal, I see you nodding your head. Behavioral approach, is that something that resonates with you? Is there anything else that we should be focusing on?
I would always just say to be a cynic, and whenever you receive any sort of offer, and I know it sounds simplistic, and it does. I would imagine while you're sitting here that your phone will receive some sort of scam text message, SMS. I mean, 60% of the world's population has a phone. Why is cybercrime so prolific? I mean, it's because a criminal can target us at any time, any day. And I'll say, though, that how Interpol how we work. We have 106 member countries, and some are very, very well developed and well resourced to combat. Many of them, though, are simply not. And so what we do is we have to rely on private partners who have this sort of expertise, like Trend Micro, like Google, to assist us in many operations, because it's the intelligence that they see that enforcement just doesn't have the window into that helps us. We have an initiative we call Gateway, and actually Trend Micro, I'll just give them the credit, one of our most prolific, important partners in Gateway. and many of our operations that we've done, especially in 2025, they've been successful because of the information that companies such as Trend Micro have provided us.
Thank you, and we're happy to do that.
Yeah, really dismantling this link-based networks require joint efforts, right, between law enforcement, between the private sector, and the policymakers. And Dr. Porter used it as well in a different part of the ecosystem. How can teams collaborate and move collaboration to real-world, on-the-ground impact?
Yeah, if you're a cyber defender, I think, again, much like those criminal networks about, there's going to be different people on your team with different skill sets. So having your cyber defensive data in the cloud allows everyone to see it at the same time, operate off the same shared operational picture. It's also important to collaborate, even for Google, as big as we are. We still need our public sector partners, right? NCA and others in Saudi are great partners. Trend Micro and others are great partners when it comes to, the endpoint detection, right? Bad guys are counting on us not collaborating. AI tools are really useful in making sure that all members of the team don't overlook. So at Google in particular, we actually have a sort of good problem, which is we have so much data, too much data, right? It would be very difficult for any threat actor to not be detected on our systems somewhere in the world. We control 1/4 of the global internet data centers and fiber optic lines. But do we always know what we're looking for? We need an Interpol to tell us this spear phishing message is different than the rest. It's a more advanced actor, or it's someone we're particularly concerned about. We need our other partners to tell us what their visibility is if they're seeing operations going on. Well, if you're, a cyber intelligence analyst and you're getting this great data from all these sources, there's a risk for anyone in overlooking an alert or recognizing the importance of a new piece of information. For me, anyway, as an analyst, I've found great utility in AI. Not replacing my job, but actually making sure that I do it correctly, that I don't miss something. Have you read this report? It pertains to this investigation that you're doing. I think that's been proven very valuable for us at Google. The other thing I'll point out, which is not an obvious use of AI, but we've gotten tremendous benefit from is, and I think would apply to many people in the audience, your incident response, your more technical people in the SOC, sometimes they're good at writing reports, sometimes they're not. I think, I'm sure in law enforcement that's the case. By implementing AI into our workflows, we increased by 51% the amount of cases we could investigate internal to Google. Hackers trying to get into our network. We've been able to investigate 51% more of those tickets, of those cases, without hiring anyone. And almost all of that gain, it didn't come from AI automating the investigation or automating the technical analysis. It took all the data that they gathered once they'd kicked the bad guys out, and it automated their first draft loss. It said, here, now they still have to go in and fix it themselves, but just by taking that part of the workflow that maybe they're not an expert in, we've been able to get a lot more benefit out of our existing technical personnel, and I think that lesson probably would apply to most teams.
Yeah, so smarter use of AI in terms of internal systems to increase and improve the workflow. Professor Marco, so it sounds like collaboration has to go between borders as well as between different industries and different sectors. But what are some of the gaps that you are seeing? Because we're hearing the need for collaboration and some examples of collaboration, but what are the gaps that are not yet addressed?
Well, I guess from the example given on stage here are positive examples. So you see a cooperation between different entities, so Interpol or Europol, as well as the technological partners. That's all perfect. And I think the more data the more data sources we can have, and the more experts that are trying to prioritize and say this is what you need to look for, that is working perfectly. I think when it comes to the legal side, things are significantly more difficult. We're seeing that, the people on stage didn't need a lawyer to tell them or a government to tell them through legislation that they should cooperate. It's in their self-interest, and that usually works well. We however see that there are some responsibilities for governments and the international community to achieve, and the forum here is one of the opportunities where they're bringing different stakeholders together, among them legislators, and I think we should really point to them and say, you need to get your act together as well. It is impossible that over the last 20 years we've seen such rapid progress with regard to the issues on a technical, organizational level. and on the other hand, the lawmakers are struggling to put together the most simple things. I don't have a quick fix. I mean, we saw the government shut down in the US, and you're wondering why they didn't figure it out yet to put together a budget. But definitely, if the big powers are supporting this initiative, countries like the US that have been pushing on the UN level for harmonized legislation for a long period of time, if we do not see those actors, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia pushing through the forum here, it will be difficult to make progress with so many players, with so many countries. But I really see there is a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah. And if it's so difficult to move legislation forward when there are a lot of players at stake, what can governments do that actually want to move forward but may not have that big cooperation behind them? What can they do to move forward despite the situation?
Okay, so interestingly, when I've been working with developing as well as with developed countries, and I find that despite the fact that developing countries have limited resources, I've seen great progress being made there over the last 10 years. So we're seeing small island nations that have developed and implemented and are actually enforcing solid legislation. It's not rocket science. I mean, we spoke about the advantages of AI. They can not only pull together a report, you can basically tell an AI, hey, this is the country I'm coming from, here are a couple of legislation I have in my country, draft me a cyber that is in line with the legislation, the drafting style, and in line with other standards and values. It is not rocket science. What we're seeing is, I think, beyond national legislation, this is actually where most of the work is done. What we need is a harmonization, an approach where the countries are willing to give up a small percentage of sovereignty in order for a greater good. And that's where I really see it within the European Union, within this room. When it comes to the UN, I currently see that if you look at the last General Assembly, I mean, there wasn't the spirit of, hey, we're working together, but there were proud national approaches. I think we need this additional move, and I'm optimistic that forums like this, where you have a broader community coming together, at one point the push. Maybe we find the inspirational leaders that are taking this forward, different large nation states that are pulling together other ones as well. So that's my hope.
On how much would that help the law enforcement side if we do see some of that suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we would love to have harmonization, because when we ask countries, and we'll convene them at our regional conferences, and all the time, it's always cybercrime is the #1 threat to citizens, and we ask, like, what's the biggest issue that you face? And there's going to be resources, tools, things like that, specialized units, but often it's just the inability to rapidly share information between countries. That really has been one of the most limiting things to effectively combat cybercrime. Sometimes between countries, cybercrime is just defined too, so that there's a lot of different complexities. I will just, for a plug for Interpol, that's kind of our role, especially in the Cybercrime Directorate, is we serve as a contact between all 196 countries. So if there is an issue, we can't solve everything, but we do serve as a touch point for all 196. And what we have also done, I'll just say, is that I can't stress it enough about how important partnerships are to cybercrime. And so what we've done this year is we've convened, we call it CyberX, it's our cyber expert work group, and we asked all of our 196 countries. I don't want the heads of the law enforcement, because they're usually not cybercrime experts. What I need is subject matter experts that are actually on the ground investigating. So far for the CyberX, 180 experts, law enforcement experts in cybercrime from 85 countries, and I think that has been a very powerful tool, and will project, I think, a lot of what we do going forward.
Yeah, and Professor Margo was just talking about, legal frameworks catch up with the technology and the innovation. Dr. Porter, I know that you see a lot of threats happening in real time, despite the fact that legal frameworks are still trying to catch up. How much should corporations, should private industries absorb in terms of when legal frameworks are not there to cover the gap?
I think for a company, a small, medium-sized business, or even a large company, the amount of investment that is rational for you to make as a single company may be based on, preventing your own losses, right? Get hacked because we will lose so much money or so much reputation. I was discussing this in another panel. is that many companies hold sensitive data or relationships with other companies. So if you get hacked, it also affects your suppliers or your customers. Or if you're a hospital and you get hacked, in addition to fines or direct economic loss, you've also the privacy of your patients, and you've deterred people in the future from seeking medical care, because they don't want their records lost. The damage to society is always greater than the damage to the company when a company is hacked. So part of what is important as a role of the public sector, I think it's twofold. One, as I mentioned earlier, is sharing back and forth on specific threats. Governments are going to have ways, law enforcement ways of knowing about things that companies won't know about. So each side is going to have unique data. But even on top of that, making sure that society as a whole is protected and that everyone's not just operating in their own self-interest, but that you're taking into account those external costs of damage to your company. You can't really just doing that voluntarily. You need regulation in order to justify. For the CISO to go to the CEO, they need to be able to point and say, we have an obligation to people who are not shareholders or necessarily part of our company, the broader public. That's an intrinsic government that I think the NCA and others in the kingdom are playing, and that hopefully we can greater partnership in the region. At Google, we value that because hundreds of millions use our different services, some of them billions. So we keep everyone all over the world using Gmail and Android phones. We already know about that, but there might be particular sensitivities in one country greater than in another, and we need to hear from our sector partners, this is our top priority in our region. So it's not one generic cybersecurity investment all over the world. It is particular to the needs of each region.
So you really can't do it alone, it sounds. Mr. Skinner, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that all the layers are important. The vendors collaborate and cooperate amongst themselves, and that cooperation, I think, is in reasonable shape and could certainly improve, because the competitors are always trying to figure out what they want to hold back versus what they want to share with the competition. But for the greater good, it is important to share threat intelligence rapidly, even between vendors. At the government level, not only do vendors work with specific local governments that are impacted in particular campaigns, but Interpol plays a super important role in enabling the higher speed and the breadth of information sharing. And these are taking advantage of the cooperation problems that we have in this industry, the speed at which we're able to cooperate. They're aware that it's not super efficient yet. They'll build campaigns that involve hops through multiple countries, because they know that law enforcement is going to have to engage with law enforcement in other countries, and if you're trying to talk about takedowns, it just complicates the process. They're doing that on purpose because of the problem that we're talking about. So that data sharing is important. We're big supporters of that, and the industry working to evolve beyond the real basic information sharing about domain names and IP addresses and malware signatures to behavioral information. Threat research community did a great job on that. So I see a lot of progress, but it's important.
Yeah, and before we end, I would like to get your thoughts on what's next. If you have to point to the next frontier of link-based crime, the threat that is not getting enough attention today that will matter tomorrow, what do you think the audience should be preparing for, Dr. Jetton?
Yeah, I mean, so AI is always the buzzword, right? But I do think the move from generative AI to agentic AI, I think in time. So generative AI, we're creating something. And so I was at a technical conference a few weeks ago, and primarily what we see from Interpol and our members, AI is being used to increase the efficiency, scope, and effectiveness of emails, of phishing scams. But this company said that for the first time that they saw AI-powered malware, like AI-generated malware. And so that's the generative part, creating it. The thing that it sounds science fiction, but I think eventually we will move there, is actually going where it's creating malware, and now it's going to target infrastructure like your water systems and your electrical systems and things like that. And so that, to me, is the thing that kind of keeps me up at night, I think.
Yeah, well, Dr. Porter, how?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, As an intelligence analyst, I'm usually the pessimist. It's my job to talk about problems. So I'm glad you talked about the problems. I'll have a rare chance to say something positive. I'm actually an optimist. I will help defense. And for those of you in the audience, what that will look like, yes, we worry about the technical detection and intel sharing and how I automate all that. But the big picture, more senior thing is going to be something that humans are always going to be necessary for, which is exercise judgment, setting priorities. How do you tell the AI what to do? And so I think within the next few years, what you will see is AI will be good enough, agentic and otherwise, an agentic SOC, for example, will be good enough at defense that when it detects a problem in the middle of the night, it not only will alert you and correlate that intel, but it will also automatically respond, start kicking them out of the network, start shutting down parts of the network, particularly important in OT systems. If you detect a problem in your OT environment, what do you shut down automatically versus what do you need to approve shutting down? Those are not technical cybersecurity decisions, those are operational business decisions, and you need to be thinking about that. We've never had that opportunity before where you can automate it, where it could happen in seconds, right? Instead of hours or days, you could make those decisions instantly. It's a huge advantage for the to be able to automate your defenses, but it will require you to think through, not just with your technical staff, but with your business leaders, what do we want to happen in the event of a breach?
Yeah, Professor Marco?
I know it's not really cool, but I also am pretty optimistic about AI. We can train the algorithms by using positive data, so I'm not really that afraid about this one. What I'm more worried about currently is the state of quantum computing and the race between breaking the encryption by using quantum computing and quantum encryption. So that's something that's going to be a game changer, and there we will not have the ability to train an algorithm with positive data or to put a layer on top and the worst crimes from being committed through the most powerful AI. Here we have less possibility to influence.
All right, and Mr. Skinner?
Yeah, I think the shift to behavioral detection is moving along very, very quickly and working well and really targets the attacker behavior that we've about here, and I think that AI is particularly good at that kind of detection, sifting through a huge amount of activity going on in the environment and spotting weird patterns, spotting patterns of behavior, rather than focusing on recognizing fingerprints or signatures. So I share optimism that AI is helping on defense, it's helping on accelerating the SOC, it has the promise to automate response. Everybody's got to get up to speed with their comfort on auto response, but I think it's going to have a big impact. I think the last thing I want to leave people is, besides the traditional network security intrusions and the intrusions by hackers in that sense, AI is powering a big rise in social engineering and hacking of the process. People have to really be thinking about their help desk processes, the HR hiring processes, and so on, where hackers are trying new ways to get into the organization, which again are going to rely on behavioral detection and on arming people with the ability to feel confident pushing back on some requests that may come in through unusual channels.
Yeah, so while the challenges are evolving, we have no choice but to embrace technology that we have today to improve our technical defenses and have smarter cooperation between enforcement, the industry, and policy. So thank you all so much for your kind attention, and I hope you can help me, our panelists today.